Hello and welcome to this video. I'm Marcus Hayes, and today I want to talk about something that I touched on at the beginning of the last video. And the last video, for you guys that didn't see it, was me giving a detailed description of my daily routine that I've built that helps to keep me on track and ultimately goes a long way to preventing me from drinking or taking drugs. Now, essentially, a couple of weeks ago, me and my girlfriend were quite ill, and then that sort of started a chain of events where I ended up, getting to a position where my mind was telling me that, this self-improvement stuff and living a healthy life wasn't for me. And I just went off my routine, and just negative thoughts started to come in. And as I say, I just started thinking that this wasn't for me. Now, I will say straight away that I didn't fall off the wagon during this period. I didn't drink, I didn't take drugs, but these things are a slippery slope. So, it's always possible, whenever I go through a negative period, that could be the end result, which it luckily wasn't. But this period of time sort of showed me how important some of the things that I've been saying on these videos are. Things like momentum, things like living in the present moment, things like the fact that living a healthy life is really good for mental health, etc., etc. So in this video, I want to basically talk you through what happened during that period when I was ill, and just, describe how things sort of went downhill a little bit. And then I want to talk about how I sort of looked back at that period afterwards and dissected it and analysed it, but in a way that's going to benefit me in the future. It might sound contradictory, because I've said, you should live in the present moment, you shouldn't be drawn into past or future. But I think when you have a negative time, it's very important to look back at it, to learn from it. But there's a certain way you need to do it. What you don't want to do is look back at it and get drawn back into the same negative thoughts. Your mind will do that to you if you allow it to. You'll end up basically going back round the merry-go-round again and end up in the same boat. But these negative times that we have in our lives are the best time to learn and grow as a person. So it's essential that you do look back at things to learn and to grow, but it's also essential that you do it in a certain way so that you don't just look back at things and regret them and allow your mind to start making up alternative endings to these stories and basically end up reliving these negative times in your mind. Now, ultimately, although I was ill, I don't see that as a sort of reason to be forgiven for, falling off my routine and stuff. I mean, as you're about to hear, I was actually stuck in bed for a couple of days. So, I could be forgiven to not going to the gym and stuff for that couple of days. But it sort of opened up a can of worms where, even after that, once I was sort of well enough to get up and, get about again, the sort of negativity carried on quite a way after that. And ultimately, we want to build ourselves to the point where whatever happens in our lives, we're still on track. So just because I was ill, that was no sort of excuse. In an ideal world, I wouldn't have allowed the negativity to sort of prolong. But, ultimately in life, if your mind starts dragging you into past or future, or just dragging you into negativity in general, and, in an ideal world, you're able to, in the moment, bring your focus back to the present moment and not allow your mind to draw you away, for a prolonged period in an ideal world. But if you're not able to do that, and some people are never able to do that, then, once the dust has settled, once the negative time has passed and you're in a better mind state, because it's important to know that all these negative things, they will pass, So it's important that if you can't sort of nip it in the bud, when your mind throws these things at you, it's important to look back at it at some point in the future. But as I say, in a certain way. Now, there's another example, actually, before I start talking about, the time when I was ill. I actually ended up having a pop at someone in the street recently. I'll just briefly talk you through the situation and then how I looked back at that situation. And I was able to sort of look back at that situation pretty much straight after it happened, and then again in my journal the next day. So a guy basically, we was parking, there was 2 parking spaces, and the guy in front wanted to park and my girlfriend was driving and she wanted to park. Because there was 2 spaces, my girlfriend backed into this one and then, it left the one in front for the guy to park into. And, he decided to leave his car in the middle of the road, get out the car and come over and start shouting at my girlfriend. And it just seemed to me that as soon as he realised that she wasn't on her own, he then walked off and got in his car. She sort of said, there's 2 spaces. But he was still giving it. And then he sort of saw me in the passenger seat. And then that was when he walked off to his car. So, we parked up and, situation's over, or it should have been. But I sort of had the urge once we'd parked and, I was sort of walking past him to say to him, you seem to stop giving it the big one there once you realised she wasn't on her own. And it just started like a, swearing backwards and forwards, completely unnecessary, didn't turn into a fight or anything like that. I do believe that he was a bit out of order, and that he was, having a pop because he didn't think that my girlfriend was with someone, but, that's irrelevant. Now, when I look back at that situation, literally, once we'd been driving off, I was able to see it for what it was. At the end of the day, we weren't in danger. The guy clearly stopped shouting once he realised that she was not on her own. So there was no chance of any danger coming our way. The situation was over. And yeah, it didn't need me to, have a pop at him. But, that's what my mind sort of made me do, essentially, And, when I look at it, I think if I was able to sort of, in the moment, focus on the present moment, and the present moment was that neither of us were in danger, everyone had parked, it was all, something out of nothing, then I would have been able to nip it in the bud, but I wasn't able to. So, that sort of proves to me that the reason that it escalated is because I failed to focus my attention on the present moment. Now, when I sort of look into it a bit deeper, why did my mind make me, feel like it needed to lash out, or make me feel like I needed to lash out? Well, in my past, I've been, fearful of confrontation. I've sort of been a bit of a coward, and, in my youth, that really, really affected me. That caused me a lot of regret, So, my mind is using past experiences of not really being game for confrontation, hating fighting and stuff like that. And then it's created some future hero version of myself where I don't take anything from anyone. And yeah, that's why it's drawn me into this unnecessary situation where I've had a pop at the guy. Now, I could have looked back at it, and a lot of people would look back at it in this way, look back at it, that guy was out of order. I could have spent my whole day like moaning about it, everyone I meet, this geezer earlier, I had to tell him, blah, 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 and just keep reliving this thing over and over and over again. Or, look back at it and, allow my mind to create alternative endings to this story where we had a fight and this and that. Does it sound familiar? Like when your mind does that, where you just get drawn back into the same emotion that you was in that sort of situation. Or, I could have looked back at it another way, which isn't healthy, and regretted that, I had a pop, I wish I didn't do that, look back at it with embarrassment, Now, neither of those ways would serve me, looking back at it like that, because you're looking back at the thought and the emotion of the situation. You're not looking back at it, sort of looking from outside at what had happened, in your mind. So I sort of looked back at it and analysed it in terms of what my mind did. My mind has probably used past experiences that are, deep in your mind, where I've sort of been fearful of confrontation, not been great at fighting and that sort of stuff. And then that sort of, developed a fear, emotional fear, which has then, caused me to lash out. And, I looked back at it and accepted that my mind had drawn me away from the present moment being a situation where nothing was going to happen, neither of us were in danger, and yeah, just dragged me into this emotion that was probably come from some past experience that's deep in my mind, and then, enabled me to lash out. So I've looked back at it in a healthy way. I haven't been drawn back into those emotions. I've looked back at it in a healthy way, and, hopefully that will mean that when I'm in a situation that's similar in the future, I will be able to analyse the present moment as it is and realise that, if it was exactly the same situation again, realise that nothing needs to be done. And it's also important to know that, if you are in a situation where it's life and death and something does need to be done, then, looking at things as they are will put you in a better position to act. Now, ultimately, if he had pulled out a knife or a gun whilst I'm in this unnecessarily emotional state, I probably wouldn't have been able to deal with it as well as if I was calm, collected, you know, assessed what was going on in the present moment, you know, and then deal with it from there. So that's just one situation where, you know, I wasn't able to bring my focus back to the present moment in time to stop the situation escalating, but I was able to look back at it literally 10 minutes later and assess it in a healthy way, which will hopefully help me in the future. Anyway, let's get into this period of time where I was ill and where the sort of negativity was more prolonged, you know. So basically, I was ill for a couple of days. I was literally stuck in bed. I had headache, eye ache, my muscles were aching, I felt sick. I couldn't sleep because I was in so much pain, and I ended up taking sort of the maximum amount of paracetamol that you could take per day just to, you know, get myself to sleep. And yeah, literally spent all day in bed for 2 days. And obviously in them 2 days, everything went out the window. You know, I wasn't walking around the block, I wasn't exercising at home, I wasn't going to the gym, I wasn't meditating, I wasn't having my cold showers. I think I journaled 1 out of 2 of those days. But yeah, you know, everything sort of went out the window because I was sort of stuck in bed for that couple of days, which, you know, could be forgiven. But after that, you know, probably for about a week, you know, it just seemed like, you know, because I know that I needed to get back on my routine as soon as possible. I understand how good, you know, how important momentum is. I understand how bad things can get if I allow myself to not stay on track. You know, ultimately I'll end up drinking and taking drugs. So, you know, I know how important it is to get back on my routine as soon as I can. So once I wasn't spending all day in bed, you know, I started going for my walks again, you know, doing my workouts at home. I didn't go to the gym for quite a few days afterwards, but yeah, I was getting back into the motions. And yeah, it just wasn't working for me, you know, like it just seemed like I was getting more and more fed up with this sort of healthy life. And, you know, even as I was getting more and more recovered from being ill, my mojo was just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. Eventually I did start going back to the gym. And then even then, like, you know, I just wasn't enjoying it. You know, the fact that I wasn't enjoying my workouts at home, I sort of thought once I go back to the gym, I'll enjoy that more, because I do enjoy going to the gym more than working out at home. But yeah, you know, even like the healthy eating and stuff, like, and my mind just kept telling me that, you know, this healthy life wasn't for me. You know, my reticular activation system, which I mentioned in a previous video, which is basically a filter where your mind shows you things that it thinks are relevant. So if you're in a positive mind state, it will show you positive things. You know, if you're sort of actively seeking opportunities in life, opportunities will find you. Whereas if you're in a negative state, you know, it will just show you things that, you know, reinforce negativity. You know, if you're sort of one of these people that thinks, oh, nothing's ever going to happen for me, it won't. Yeah, your reticular activation system shows you what it thinks is relevant based on your mind state. So because I was in this negative mind state, you know, my reticular activation system was showing me things to reinforce that. And yeah, it just got worse and worse and worse. And, you know, luckily I know that these things will pass and things will get better if you just keep at it. And that's what sort of got me through. And then, you know, eventually I had sort of almost fully recovered from being ill. So then I was in a position where I could look back at the whole period in terms of what my mind was doing to me. So what I realised was that, you know, once I'd started getting back on my routine, going for walks and stuff, doing my workouts, I realised that I wasn't actively focusing on those things in the present moment. So, for instance, my walks around the block, I wasn't, you know, focusing on the walk around the block. And I used that walk as a time to, you know, listen to stuff educational. I realised when I looked back that basically I was just trying to get to the end of the walk, you know. So, you know, looking into the future, I wasn't focusing on the walk, I was focusing on getting the walk done. And then, you know, once I get home, it's time for me to work out. Again, instead of focusing on every exercise, I was just focusing on getting the exercises done. And I mentioned in the video when I was talking about momentum and consistency, I am half-arsing the working out at home. But in terms of the volume, you know, I'm only doing 3 exercises and 2 sets of each. But that doesn't mean that I should be half-arsing the exercises themselves, you know. I still need to be focusing fully on the exercises. So, you know, my mind sort of tricked me in a way, because I'd sort of decided to half-arse the volume of workouts that I do at home. It then sort of allowed my mind to make me half-arse the workouts themselves, you know. And then even with like the healthy eating and stuff, instead of focusing on what I'm eating, enjoying the food, because when I'm in a positive, healthy mind state, I do enjoy like chicken salad and stuff. There's a couple of things I throw in the salad that taste good, to make it a bit more appetizing, and I enjoy it. I enjoy that I'm giving my body healthy food, I enjoy. All right, GoPro life, just had to change the battery. So yeah, as I was saying, when I'm in a positive mind state and I'm really on track, I do enjoy things like eating healthily, things like working out, things like cold showers. It's all about your RAS, your reticular activation system. It will enforce whatever mind state you're going through. So, if you're positive about things, it will reinforce that. But if you're negative about things, it will reinforce that. And that's why momentum is so important. You have to keep the momentum going. Keep the momentum going with your routine, with your positivity. Keep moving forward. Keep striving for things, because that way you're always, on this sort of positive journey, and then your RAS will show you things to reinforce that. So I was talking about how, once I'd sort of got over this sort of negative time, I started looking back at things for what they were, started realising that I wasn't focusing on all these things that are in my routine as I was doing them. I wasn't being present in the present moment whilst I was doing these things. I was sort of just trying to get them done, which essentially is me looking into the future. Instead of focusing on the workout, I was focusing on getting the workout done. Instead of focusing on walking around the block, I was focusing on getting the walk done. Instead of focusing on eating my healthy food, I was focusing on getting the food ate, And then once I'd sort of looked back and dissected it in that way, almost instantly things changed. I was getting back onto that positive thing because, I've sort of looked back at it and understood it for what it is. So then my mind can't trick me into thinking that this stuff isn't for me, because I've already looked back and analysed it, what my mind has done. My mind has told me that it's not for me because I haven't been focusing on things properly. I haven't been giving things their full attention. My mind is telling me that working out isn't for me because I haven't been giving it the respect it deserves. I haven't been focusing on my workouts. I haven't been concentrating on the pump, how good it feels. All that went out the window. I was just focusing on getting the workout done. My mind was telling me that healthy food wasn't for me because I wasn't focusing on, me eating healthy food, which is good. I was just focusing on getting the food done. Now, if I had have not allowed myself to look back at what happened during that period of time and analyse it for what it was, then maybe I would have carried on that slippery slope and who knows where I would have ended up. Or if I had have looked back at it in terms of, oh yeah, the other day I didn't enjoy the gym, the other day I didn't enjoy my walk around the block, oh, the other day I really hated it, and that, looking back at it in terms of getting lost in those thoughts again, then again, the slippery slope would have continued. But because I was able to look back at it in a certain way, it seemed like almost instantly I was then back on track, doing my routine every day. I've been going to the gym nearly every day. I think I've done 13 days out of the last 14. And yeah, I'm loving life again. So that period of time has taught me a lot, and that's why I wanted to sort of put it into a video to share it with you guys, because maybe you can sort of see how I've learned a lot from that, and maybe it will be helpful to some of you guys. But yeah, to summarize, ultimately you want to always try and live in the present moment as much as possible, apart from the times where you need to plan things in the future. Yeah, that's fine. Or if you're reminiscing about something in the past, or if you're looking back at something to learn from it, not to regret it, not to get drawn back into that negative mind state, yeah, but to learn from it. But ultimately, you want to live in the present moment as much as possible. Now, if negative thoughts do arise, in an ideal world, you want to see it for what it is. That's my mind tricking me there. It's dragging me into future or past, or, that's not going to serve me. Accept it, don't judge it, don't fight it. Bring your attention back to the present moment. But if you can't do that, that's fine. If it's a prolonged thing, or you end up having a rant, or you end up having a few days where you feel down, don't fight it, because then you add fuel to the fire. The more you fight what your mind's doing, the more you won't win. You need to accept it, but accept it for what it is. Bring your focus back to the present moment. But if you can't, and you need to just ride it out, then just know that negative times pass and you will feel better at some point. And then when you do, then look back at it, but look back at it in a certain way. Don't look back at it and get lost in those same thoughts and emotions again. Look back at it in terms of trying to understand what your mind did to you at that time. And then that's a way of, you know, not just ignoring the bad times and, you know, sort of, you know, letting things build up in the back of your mind, which will then trip you up in future. You know, it's a way of actually dealing with things, but in a way that's going to serve you and help you, rather than a way that's going to give your mind another excuse for you to go down a negative road. But in general, in your everyday life, try and keep a momentum going where you are being positive, you are doing what you need to do, you are living in the present moment, you are living a healthy life, you know, exercising, eating healthy food, you know, because when you're on that momentum, there's less chance for your mind to draw you out of it, and then you won't need to worry about drawing your attention back to the present moment or looking back and analysing negative things. But ultimately, negative things do arise, and you can either allow them to control you, whether it be then or at some point in the future, or you can use it as a time to learn and grow. You want to get to the point where essentially there is no bad time in your life. There's either a good time, which you can enjoy, you know, life is to be enjoyed, or there's a time that's not so good, but that's more of a learning. You know, you'll learn more from the bad times than you will from the good times. So essentially, there is no bad times. So I hope that sort of explains what I'm trying to explain. You know, a lot of this stuff is really hard to put into words. I just put the camera on and start talking, and yeah, I hope it sort of resonates with some of you guys, or, you know, I hope it's been useful. It was certainly useful for me to look back at those situations when they happened, and yeah, it's something that I want to actively do, you know, moving forward. Whenever I have a time that isn't so great, I do not want to ignore it and pretend it didn't happen. I want to look back at it, dissect it, analyse it, but in a way that's going to serve me, rather than a way that's going to drag me back into those negative emotions and thoughts. And if any of you guys have had a similar situation, do put it in the comments. Nice to start a conversation around this subject. But I'll be back soon with some more videos based on self-improvement and keeping myself on track. But until then, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.